We are going to be having a lively discussion on the professional services that the counseling department offers. And I have in studio with me officials from the counseling department. We are going to be talking about mental health. Of course, that is extremely important. There is no health, it is said, without mental health. Additionally, we know that life in itself has its stressors, and there are many things that bring stresses to life. However, for the past 18 months as well, we have been grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic, and that in itself has brought additional stressors to people's lives. But nonetheless, mental health is something that we have to face each day, all of us. And I have in studio with me the director of the counseling department, Mrs. Michelle Delacoudre Blake.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Blake. Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and to everyone listening and looking at us this afternoon.
Right, and then I have Nadia Rawlings.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Nadia is a clinical counselor at the counseling department. And then I have Valencia Byron. I think I got to mix up there. Melisha Caesar.
Yes.
Melisha? I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. Good afternoon, all.
Melisha Caesar is a family counselor. And we're going to have Naima Hazel, who will join us virtually later on. And later on as well, I have in studio, we'll have a changeover, and we are going to have Valencia Byron, who is a clinical counselor in the counseling department. A warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have you here once again. We have a large panel, but I think with the information that you have to share, which is very substantial, we'll get through it. Now, the counseling department does a lot of work, and the work that the counseling department does has to be highlighted. As I mentioned in my introduction, mental health is extremely important to all health. And let me ask you, Director, what brings you here today to working for you?
All right. Thank you very much again for having us. I think you've had us a few times over this especially over the pandemic period, when, of course, as you mentioned, the topic of mental health was very, and still is very relevant. So certainly we've been here. We're here today in a little bit of a different context. As you correctly said, mental health is, just right on the table in this pandemic. And there's some new things happening with us in the counseling department as we respond to the needs of people, as we respond to the growing needs of the population. And so the counseling department is in the process of being officially rebranded as the National Counseling Center. And we felt that this was a great opportunity to do a few things, to introduce the general public again to the team. We have a new team since the last time I was here. We have some changes. So introduce the general public to the team, including a new deputy director, who I hope the officials could have joined us immediately if we could. So introduce the team, introduce people to what we do and how we do it. So again, because we are so focused on the needs of what is happening, especially now, we felt that it was important to reintroduce. We don't want to just take it for granted that people, know there's a counseling center, or in this case, a national counseling center. We're going to focus on that name, a national counseling center. We want to reintroduce people. We want to reorient people to our flagship program, the Family Matters program, which is an excellent program that gives families direct and practical contact with an individual who works with them. So we want to reintroduce that or reorient that. We want to talk a little bit about our rebranding. So if we're talking about the National Counseling Center, what does that involve? What does that mean? So we want to talk a little bit about that. We want to go into a little bit about how we envision our future, and just to give some general information. So it's a lot, there's a mouthful, there's a lot of information that we have, because again, as I said, we don't want to take it for granted that people are aware. We want to just sort of bring people up to date with what's going on with us, so that people can make the best use of our services. So in a nutshell, that's why we're here today.
Right. You know that counseling is so important, but somehow people don't make enough use of the services of professional counselors. Why? I think it's because somewhere ingrained in our society is that if you go for counseling, you're crazy. But we all need counseling at some point in our lives. We just may be going through a very rough time in our lives, and we need someone to talk to. Not just someone to talk to, but someone who is going to empathize with us, and someone who we know we can trust. That is very important, and would keep what we say to them. A listening ear that people need. Now, you mentioned the rebranding of the counseling department and calling it a National Counseling Center. Now, what is it that you do? What are some of the services that you offer?
All right. Well, before I go into that, though, I want to just talk a little bit about what you just said, because the fact is, and I hope my colleagues could jump in and, add as we go along, the fact is there has been a shift around how people see counseling and mental health services. And that shift, I think, has come because, one, I think there's an appreciation of the fact that mental health services isn't speaking about mental illness. It's speaking about exactly that, mental health services. And so what is happening is there is a streamlining of mental health services in just about everything, because it needs to happen. So because of that, we at the Counseling Center are finding that our services are being utilized just in a very broad way, in a broader way actually. And so when I'm going to talk about some of the services that we offer, I wanted to put that there as a starting point. The fact that there are shifting concepts about what mental health is. So what do? We do so many things. And the folks here are going to jump in and help me. So I'm going to start off with our primary focus. And primary focus is clinical counseling intervention. And that is why we have a team of clinical counselors. So you have myself, you have Naima Hazel, who is the Deputy Director, Clinical Staff. You have Nadia Rollins and Valencia Smitten-Byron, who have just joined us in the department as clinical staff. For those people who are aware of the department and how it functioned before, they would have known two other names as clinical staff. They would have known Zara Jacobs and Davin Francis, who have flown and gone on to other things. And so we are lucky enough to be able to secure two other clinical staff almost immediately after they left. So we have a full complement. So what do we do? First and foremost, we do clinical counseling. Now, clinical counseling involves interacting with people who need a particular service from particular training. So there must be training that supports the ability to help people resolve issues on a particular level. So clinical. What else do? We do workshop development and presentations. I'm not going to go in any particular order, but we do workshop developments and presentations. That's another thing that we are called on all the time. And that is because, again, the recognition that information and awareness and knowledge helps to bridge gaps. And so institutions and organizations are always asking us about workshop development and presentations and so forth. We do EAP services within the government. EAP is Employee Assistance Program. And basically what that says is if there is a situation where somebody is having difficulties for whatever reason, it affects their work. And as responsible employers, it's important for you to be able to provide assistance in some way. And so the government service definitely uses us for helping government workers through difficult situations. We do clinical assessments. Clinical assessments are often needed for the court, for law, for what other things. Clinical assessments are used to be able to give a picture, a clinical picture of an individual in a particular situation. And so our staff, our clinical staff, is able to use the relevant tools to be able to make some assessments about an individual. We do crisis management and response. So crisis management as it relates to natural disasters. We're in hurricane season. And so certainly our mental health professionals have been involved in helping people through disasters. And there's crisis management that comes as a result of trauma. So it could be that something has happened in a particular community where a particular community is impacted, or whatever may happen that causes trauma. So there's crisis response. We do some limited online and virtual counseling, and that is something that we are exploring some more, especially in our new reality. We do a lot of psychoeducational sessions. So we're always on TV and radio and someplace doing psychoeducational sessions. And psychoeducational sessions speak to providing information that people could have to be able to help to understand a particular issue. We are building our social media presence. We have some of that, but we are building our social media presence some more. We have our Family Matters services, which we are very proud of because that is such a very direct and practical way of working with families. So those are some of the things that we have when we talk about the things that we do. Those are some of the things that we do. And so you could see, Lesroy, why it's so important for us to broaden our scope. So it's not just counseling center, it's a national counseling center.
Yes, and what you do, the work that you do impacts so many people.
Yes.
And there are so many sectors within the society that can really take advantage of what you do at the National Counseling Center.
Right.
Because people go through their different types of problems. They say there are family problems. You have problems of people who need counseling because of trauma, whether it is they were raped, domestic violence,
yes.
And that sort of thing. And so
Right.
you would work along with other departments.
Correct.
Perhaps you mentioned the court. Where the court wants a social
Yes.
report on somebody or something like that. Or you work along with the Department of Gender Affairs.
Right. Yes.
And so on. So
Yes.
you are linked and connected in many ways.
That's why I
Now-
said earlier that mental health is and should be streamlined in everything because it is connected to everything.
Right,
So,
connected
yes.
to everything
Yes.
because stress is at work and
At
sometimes
home.
at home
Yes.
and everywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
Everywhere really.
Correct,
Yes.
correct.
Right.
It is also our goal to offer group counseling sessions because there are some persons who can benefit from that group interaction, not just
Correct.
individual counseling. So we are hoping to get into group counseling, if not this year, early in the new year.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Yes.
yes, definitely.
Okay, we are waiting for, or we have online virtually Miss Naima Hazel, who will be joining us now virtually. And Naima,
Is she there?
Naima, are you there?
Yeah.
Right, but we are not hearing you.
Okay.
Okay, we are hearing you now. We are hearing you now. Thank you very much for joining us, Naima.
It's my pleasure.
Right, and of course, this is now the new reality that we're living in the COVID-19 world. We have a lot of Zoom and virtual meetings and so on. So this is just another example of one of them. Now, Naima, Mrs. Blake, the director of the counseling department, said that there will be rebranding of the department to be called the National Counseling Center. What is behind this rebranding, this name change?
Well, as good afternoon, happy first to everybody. I'm happy to be able to join you, even virtually. You know that things have changed a lot for us in the country. Sometimes we just have to adapt and responsible, and we still can and care for each other in this way. Glad that is able to bring you for using the and long. To answer your, as Ms. Blake said, there is a broad scope change to what we do. So even though people see the National Counseling Center in a very limited way, we are rebranding so people can see the work that we actually do, and looking at ways that we can deliver our services so that our resources are being properly utilized. So we want both our clients and us as practitioners to find ways that we can work towards mutually beneficial relationships and improve the service with the resources that we have and the needs that we're seeing in the community, which are ever growing every day. I know people think that a lot of people don't go to counseling, but actually a lot of people, everybody in the studio will be nodding their heads. We do not have free time. There is a lot of persons who come to counseling. So as we look towards our future, we see ourselves, and Cabinet obviously saw us the same way and expanded our scope to see us as a national counseling center so that we could look more closely at how we are assessing our value for service and how that will be defined in the future. For example, there are costs that are associated with the delivery of workshops, presentations, clinical assessments take a lot of time. So we have to look at how these things will be assessed. So that's something we're looking at coming to the end of our quarter. We'll also be looking at ways to incorporate other clinical activities into our work. As Ms. Rollins said, incorporating more group work, additionally incorporating referrals. You know, sometimes people they don't feel confident because they have a lot of trust issues. People have a lot of trust issues. Often I find that interesting because people will say, oh, I don't go to the counselor because you can't trust people with your business. But they would tell 29 other people their business before they get to the counselor. And when they hear their business on the street, they assume it's the counselor that told their business. But really, counselors are legally bound to keep your business private, except for in mandatory reporting. If somebody's being abused or somebody is threatening to harm somebody or harm themselves or abuse elderly persons. So the way that we're broadening our scope, we're hoping to do that so people will get a better understanding of the services that we provide, if they need those services, and when they need those services, how to access them through either our agency or through different referral agencies.
Naheema.
Oh, I lost your sound. I can't hear you, LesRoy.
Morning. The professional services of the counseling department, what is the process?
Of course, it's not just, you know, you call, you make an appointment and you show up. You know, it's a process that we have to follow. And basically we have an assistant, the lovely Chanel, who keeps everyone organized and well together. She's very warm and welcoming. So when you call the office, you know, you won't feel intimidated in any way. And basically she just takes identifying information from you. So your name, contact information, age, address, those basic information. And then, of course, she asks about the presenting problems. Now, I know some persons may not be comfortable, you know, explaining the whole situation over the phone, and that's not something that you have to do. You can just give her a general summary, and she'll take note of that. Now, it's important for us to have this information, not just, you know, to have the data for demographics, but also that we are aware of the presenting problems, and so that we can also look at trends. So we'll see there may be an influx of of issues, maybe anxiety problems or depression or something like that. So it'll be able for us to look at that. And also, when she gets that information, it helps us to be able to determine, if the counseling center is the best option for the client. Because maybe they might need to be referred to maybe gender or someplace else. So, it gives us that opportunity as well. And it also gives us the opportunity to, well, I don't want to say prioritize, but do the triage of services, because we need to be able to see which problem needs to be dealt with immediately. Just like when you go to JNF Hospital, they have that board that tells you, the different levels. So we need to be able to know who we need to see urgently, so that we're able to prioritize. And not saying that everyone's issue is not a priority and not important, but we just have to be able to do it like that, okay? And then this also gives us a chance to see, which one of the team members, might be best suited for this particular problem. And of course, when you give us all of that information, we have your contact information, we're able to schedule your appointment, and we ask you about your flexibility as well, because persons can't always get away from their jobs. Persons are working. So they might be flexible, or they might be able to come at a particular time. Some might be able to come after work. So it's a whole process that we have to go through, and we also don't want people to feel that you have to call the center to ask for Mrs. Blake alone. The National Counseling Center is not Mrs. Blake alone, It's qualified. We have a qualified team. They are including the family counselors as well. So, that they can seek out other persons so that one person is not overwhelmed. Yes.
Okay, now you mentioned in terms of referrals, Nadia, and sometimes you may have to refer somebody to a psychiatrist.
Right.
Now, could you tell us the difference? There is a difference between psychology and psychiatry. Sometimes people are not always aware of what the difference is. What's the difference?
Well, I know for some people, simply put, they always say the psychiatrists are the ones that are able to give you the medication and the psychologists don't. So that's like the simple way to put it. But I know some persons, as you say, confuse it. So that's why they think of psychiatry and they think, oh, that person is crazy. And if once I go to the psychiatrist, I'm crazy, I need medication and stuff like that. But the two are similar, interrelated, because, they have to, of course, the psychiatrist has to get a feel and assess your presenting problems and stuff like that, same way as a psychologist or a counselor would do as well. So there are similar ways. Of course, as I said, of course, we don't administer medication, but they have the training to do that, with the psycho drugs.
Right, so a psychiatrist is actually a medical doctor who specializes in psychiatry.
Right, because remember, just like how you have doctors that deal with various parts of the body, the brain is an organ, and the brain is the organ
controls everything.
Right, and that's the organ that the psychiatrists deal with, because in mental illness, the very end of the extreme end of the spectrum, when we're talking about the mental health continuum, in mental illness, there is an implication that there is something affecting the brain functioning that the psychiatrist then has to write.
So it's hormonal sometimes.
And so there's hormone and chemistry and so forth, because the brain is an organ, and when things go wrong with the brain, then it affects
the entire body.
Yes, and how the person functions.
Right.
So it's important for us to recognize that, because sometimes I think people are accepting of doctors doing everything else, doctors who dealing with
aches and pains,
in any other way, but somehow there is a resistance to looking at the brain as also an organ, that could need assistance in functioning.
So you're talking about certain mental illnesses.
Right.
Like schizophrenia, paranoia, and
Bipolar disorder.
Yes.
bipolarism
Yes.
and
Yes.
so on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That really has to do with some imbalance in
Correct.
terms of chemicals
Correct.
and chemistry.
Correct. And that imbalance can't be prayed away. That imbalance has to be dealt with
Dealt
mentally.
with, right.
I am happy that you mentioned this whole thing. I know this is not a discussion on,
Yes.
on religion or faith or anything like that, but
Yes.
we have a lot of these ideas and people have a lot of myths and all kinds of things in terms of certain things can be prayed away. But I believe in faith and science. They
Right,
are not
working together.
opposed
Right.
to each other.
Right.
Yes, I agree. They need to work together, you know, very much so. And the religion is not necessarily a bad thing in some instances because it can be a protective factor because they have that, you know, faith and the support of the church and everything like that. But as you said, the two need to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not
Right.
diametrically
Right.
opposed to each other at all.
I also wanted to add, you know, when someone seeks the services of the National Counseling Center, we want to assure them of the confidentiality. Naima spoke about it, so we want them to be aware that we are legally and ethically bound, right, to keep, you know, what's said confidential. And of course, there are some exceptions, as Naima would have mentioned, in the event that there's harm to self, harm to others, or even in the case where they may want you to speak to maybe a family member or something like that. So we just want them to be, you know, assured that it's confidential because, you know, petition culture, we don't want a business on the road and we're afraid that persons, you know, are going to say what we say, you know, in the presence of the council. So it's important for them to know that as well.
I think that is extremely important because in a profession like yours, when people come to you, they just don't open up to you at once. There has to be a development of a professional relationship in which trust is built.
Right.
And if that trust is shattered, then you actually can shatter the person
Correct.
and make the
Correct,
person
yes.
to be in a worse state than when they came to you. And not only that, it would undermine the credibility and the professionalism
Right.
Right.
of the services
Correct.
that you offer. And so that is
Yes.
very, very important.
Right.
I'm aware, I'm a Catholic, and I'm aware that, you know, in the Catholic Church, they have what you call confession.
Confessions.
It is actually a sacrament.
Yes.
Yes.
And when anybody goes to the priest and they relate certain things to the priest, in the confessional, the priest is by law, as you said here, he cannot reveal
Yes.
anything that has been said to him.
Right.
And if it is discovered that he has done so, it is so serious that he will be laicized. What that means is that he will be defrocked.
Right. Okay. Yes. So it's important. It's serious. Yes. You know, with confidentiality, both Naima and Nadia spoke about confidentiality, and they gave the context of confidentiality when we could have it and when we have to break confidentiality. But having professional service is more than just assuring people of confidentiality. It's also that we have to ensure that there is an image of confidentiality. So it's more than just saying to people your information will be kept confidential. There has to be also a sense, everything that is done. So when people come in, for example, you know, you don't want people coming at the same time and sitting down in the front room, in the sitting area and say, oh wait, you do come here too? So there must be the appearance of confidentiality. When a person sits in your office, that office must be secure. It must be the appearance of confidentiality. If I have a relationship, a counseling relationship with you, and you see me in the supermarket talking to your sister, and you talk to me about concerns with your sister, I may be talking to your sister about something on the shelf that we're both looking at, but there must be the appearance. So our work is one which is intentional because we have to be confidential in our actions, and there must be the appearance of confidentiality in everything we do. So it means then that boundaries have to be kept very strict and very clearly, so that the appearance is kept.
Right, because you are dealing with people who are coming to you who are broken,
And vulnerable.
who are vulnerable,
Correct.
and who are shattered. And so therefore, you have to treat those persons and situations very delicately.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Right. Now, Melisha, you're very quiet down there. You're listening to everything. Family. You know, that word, family, is so important because the family, as we know, is the basic cell of any society. It is what holds the society together, basically, and we can say that society is made up of a number of families. And the family, when it functions well, society is better for it. But when the family dysfunctions, of course, we know we have some issues. So Family Matters, I like that name, Family Matters. You know, it can be, it can be used in more than one way. The family matters. Right, so tell us a little bit about how the Family Matters program that is at the department works.
Okay, good afternoon again. First, I will mention Melisha Caesar again, and I work with a team, and namely Alicia Collins, Michelle Ann Neal, and Jeremy Thomas. We are the 4 counselors in the department that deals with family matters. So in the Family Matters, there's a prevention and intervention family system model that we use as an intervention to help families. It's a 7-phase intervention. But before I get to that, we'll talk about the referral process. The referral process is where we get the youths or the families that we deal with. And we start with the youths from 10 to 17. And so we get referrals from the Ministry of Education, the police, Child Protective Services, probation, welfare, you know, and other families who have been through our intervention process. So in this 7-phase process, we test the youth using a testing tool that we have. We call it the YSET, but I won't get into that. So we have the YSET tool, and we test this youth, and we look at some risk factors. Risk factors, namely weak parental supervision, group influence, peer influence, you know, and stuff like that. So after the youth is being assessed, then we say, okay, well, they are eligible for the Family Matters services, and then we gain consent from the parents. And as everybody mentioned before, confidentiality, and that is one of the things that we use as report to get, you know, with the parents or guardians for the children. And once we gain consent from the parents, then we have a 7-phase intervention where we build agreement, we reframe, we use integration into the community, so on and so forth, to assist the family, give them the opportunity to build a steady foundation rather than having the outside influence be the main source of educating or influencing your child. We give them the opportunity to build a structure, a foundation where they can manage you better. Yes, yeah. So we have 3 meetings in each phase, and in each phase, 1 meeting for the family, 1 youth, 1 individual meeting with the youth, and then a next family meeting. And so let me break it down. So when we go into these meetings, we want to set a practical approach to what we're doing. So setting tasks, for example, you think it's complicated. So if a youth doesn't come home on time, they come home late. So we go into the family and we say, okay, this youth is coming home late. Why are they coming home late? What can the family in their structure or hierarchy do to make sure that this youth can come home safe? And so we also introduce or include a multi-generational aspect where we have aunts, uncles, grandparents who can build that support around the family so that they can assist to make sure that this youth is protected and safe. The next thing that we do is what is different from the clinical aspect of the counseling is that we are a practical and we are targeted. We have a targeted approach. So we don't necessarily come in and deal with the individual per se. We look at the support system around the individual, which is the child, and bring everybody involved to bring that structure and consistency. Yes.
Right. Now you mentioned, I like the word that you use, support.
Yes.
And that whole thing about the support network. But sometimes that is exactly where the problem is, and that is where the dysfunction comes in.
Yes.
Because the family member does not have, especially when it's a child, does not have that support or doesn't feel or perceive, the member perceives that he or she does not have that family support. And so therefore, feeling that way, then they certainly would behave in certain ways because they do not feel that they are supported. And that is important.
And, let me see that, yeah.
Go ahead.
And next thing that we look at when we approach a family is using the family strengths. We don't necessarily go in and say, there's a problem. We look at the strengths of the family and we use that.
You start with the strengths.
Yes. So if you have WhatsApp, for example, which is typical, you message your parents every day. So if he's coming home late, like we just mentioned, you give the task. When are you supposed to come home? What time? And, you know, all the necessary functions that you need timely, convenient for the whole family. So building the agreement that you're supposed to come home at 9 o'clock, right? And the child must say, okay, mommy, I understand. Then if the child doesn't come home at 9 o'clock, some parents wait until the children come home and they start yelling or arguing. Using the avenues that we have available to us, which is a text calling, where are you? It is 9 o'clock, come home. If you're at home, walking down the road, it's 9 o'clock, come home. Your aunt lives next to the basketball field, and you know, or you have no neighbor, he's supposed to come home at 9, go and tell him, I say, come home. And these are the kind of support systems, things that, simple things that we can implement in order to keep that structure and that flow in the family.
So you're basically talking about as well, Melisha, positive reinforcement.
Yes, exactly.
One,
yes.
and also, you know, reward for good behavior.
Yes, and
so,
and affirming and complimenting the child when they do. So if a child comes home once out of 3 days early, you acknowledge that one day. That one day that they came home early, that's the foundation, that's the building block, that's the start of the change. So now that we have a foundation, then we could start building the walls.
Right.
Yes.
Now, what makes that different to counseling? It certainly has a lot of practical aspects to it because very, very practical, and I think that is what is needed a lot of times. You know, we're in a culture, and I must say this, we live in a culture where sometimes we don't always praise and give positive reinforcement.
Yes.
Children are only noticed sometimes, sad to say, when they do something negative. And so they do things that are negative just so that they can be noticed.
And that
is the sad thing.
And also normalizing behavior. Yeah. So normalizing behavior is very important in our intervention because some children would smoke, for example, and smoking as it is, if it's marijuana, illegal and bad for the health, then parents get, you know, a little too fidgety about children smoking. But as a teenager, we'd expect that teenager would explore and, you know, look at, experiment and stuff like that. And so we now have to, as parents, family members, say, how can we change his mindset or his programming to know that? So it's educating your children and knowing, hey, this is bad, yes, but why? And how can we keep them safe? How can we educate them and be that stronger influence rather than having peers are people outside, are things that they see on TV or the internet, be that, so we need that family structure so that the family says, hey, you're smoking, it's bad for your health, it's an illegal substance, it's not good for you, and you know, the repercussions that come with it. Rather
But
than,
why would a parent go through all of that? That is probably what they're saying to themselves. And you hear certain things is, you either do what I say, you're under my roof, you're not paying the bills inside here, you're not any man in here, you're not any woman inside here, take up your things and go out of in here, or they put them out as soon as this. And these are some of the things that, I mean, we've all gone through it. We've all been told in different ways certain things like that. I mean, I know of a case right now where a mother put out her son because he's smoking marijuana. Now, is that a reason to put your child out because he's smoking marijuana? In fact, we live in a world now where they're talking about the decriminalization of marijuana and the legalization of marijuana and all of that sort of a thing. So once ago it was seen as a crime.
Mr. Williams, I want to say something here, if you don't mind.
Certainly,
Melissa,
certainly.
So you just said something, and there's something you said connected to some things that Melisha was saying. You just gave an example of somebody putting out this one because they think marijuana. One of the strengths of this approach, and these family counselors were trained. One of the strengths of this approach is that it actively seeks out the positive things that the parents are doing, no matter how they're framed and crouched in something negative. And they pull it out and reframe it in a way that both the parent and the child get to the same page. So here you're talking about this parent who put out their child. And all of us respond in the same way that you respond. Here it is, it's almost legal and so forth. What we are missing is the parents' fear, concern, heartbreak about what could happen. So what we're responding to is the putting out of the child. What we're not responding to is the concern that the parent has and no tools to be able to translate that concern into something that works with the child. That's where the family counselors come in.
Yes, because you want the family to work.
Correct.
You do not want the family
Correct.
to dysfunction. And by
Correct.
you putting out that child, is not helping basically for the family to work.
The parent put out that child because they've tried everything they could to try and keep that child safe, and they had nothing else. So the family counselors go in with practical ways. You also talked about the fact that the conversation is about you're in big man in here and so on, and you talked about some things that we all have heard. One of the things that the Family Counselors Program does, and it does very well, is it changes the communication patterns between family members. So that is a communication pattern that does not work. So it engages. At the end of the program, we have real stories of family communication shifting, so that there is the parent no longer says, "You're a big woman, I'm in charge here," and so forth. There is a conversation. This is what I need you to do. This is what I would like you to do. How can you do it so that we both and that is what happens.
And that is so important. And really and truly, sometimes you can't blame the parents because it's all that they know.
They need tools. They need tools.
And they need the tools.
Right, and sometimes they have strengths that they don't even recognize.
Correct.
Right,
the
so
family
that's why
counselors
this program, highlight
Correct.
the strengths. Like, I
They
didn't
pull
even
the
know I
strengths
could
out.
do that.
They have
You know?
been trained in being able to identify
Right.
the strengths. They work from a strengths-based approach, and they pick up on that immediately. Imagine being on the receiving end. For example, if you're a family who's always hearing about what your children are doing wrong, imagine being on the receiving end of somebody saying, "But wait a minute, you work in 3 jobs and you're not at home." It must mean that you really want to provide for your children.
Right.
Imagine being on the receiving end of that and realizing for the first time that somebody gets it. You have a place to start a conversation.
Yes.
And that's a part of the trust building.
Yes, the trust building
Yes.
and the building of that self-esteem.
Correct.
Our young people need that self-esteem, and they must really get it from the family.
Correct.
Because if they don't get it, then they end up in all kinds of other things. Sometimes our parents don't always tell us that they love us.
Right.
They prefer to do certain actions and things like that.
Yes.
You know, for example, my mother, I knew my mother had, you know, interest in me in aspiring academically and so on, because she noticed that I had certain gifts. And she never really said anything, but you know what my mother used to do? She would buy me books.
Yes.
And we were not rich. In fact, I could say that we were poor, really. But sometimes when she gets her money, she would buy a book. Those days, Hardy Boys and Enid Blyton and those. And she will bring a book for me from time to time. And she will say, you know, I'm encouraging you to read.
Correct.
And that was her way.
And that was her way.
Right.
You
So
know?
the Family Matters program does that. And perhaps, Melissa, you could tell us a little bit about the responsibility of the counselor and the client, so that we could, you know, just make sure that we get to ventilate everything that we want to say. Yeah?
So the counselor, other than doing the intervention, we're responsible for doing a conducive atmosphere where, you know, sometimes you approach a family and you have meetings with the family and they think, okay, we have to come in the living room, we have to sit in your house, but some people are not comfortable with that. So we are okay with just coming to your backyard, sitting under a tree in the community, wherever the family feels comfortable. We're okay with that. We, in the time and meetings, whenever it's conducive to the family as well, we're okay with that. So because we have a very practical and open schedule, so that if family wants to meet at 5, 6, we are okay for that, because, you know, people work. So if they want to meet at 12, it's convenient, we can do that as well. We also have to manage the process, as we say, confidentiality, making sure that we're not inputting ourselves into the family, but rather than being a, you know, a partner, a guide, you know, not necessarily telling the family what to do or how to do it, but it's just, you know, a little guidance and, what do you call it?
Right.
Certain, yes, structure, yes. We use empowering language, we reframe, so we don't say that children have problems or the family have problems. We, as Mrs. Blake said, we reframe it, we work and we let them know the strengths. This is what you're doing, but then, you know, how can you move past that? Open the barriers of, break the barriers of communication, and let them know, you know, so communicating better and stuff like that. The family responsible for being present and engaged, being open to, not necessarily being open to keeping schedules and appointments, trusting in the process and the ability to create and the opportunities for growth. So those are some of the responsibilities for both the council and the families in this intervention.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Melisha. That is so important, because the family really matters. We are going to take a break and we will be right back.
Hi everyone, good day. My name is Vincia Collins from Vincia's Artistry. Today I will be making a pair of earrings from plastic. So let's just get right into it. This is the pattern. It actually was cut from Clorox bottle. I will be painting it with polish, used polish, and I will be doing a tie-dye sort of effect. It's my own unique way of painting on plastic. Be sure to use your gloves when you're dealing with polish, but you can always use acetone or polish remover to get the stains off your finger. We're going to give this a few minutes or two to dry, and then we will do the other side. Let's turn on the other side, and we're going to do the same just as we do the front side. Look at that. Isn't that unique? After this has dried, we will then enter the air wire. Our earrings has fully dried, so we're now going to put in the air wire. So we're going to use the tip-in, and we're just going to paste the earrings. Put both of them together, preferably. And we're just going to paste right through. Okay, we're going to put in the rings. And we're going to put in the earrings.
Okay, welcome back to Working for You. We have been joined by Ms. Valencia Byron, who is a counselor at the counseling department. Now, Valencia, who are our partners in the provision of mental health and psychosocial support services?
Public. No, the National Counseling Center does not operate as an entity in itself. We have collaborations with a plethora of partners who provide mental health and psychosocial support, such as the Department of Youth, Special Victims Unit, JNF Psychological Services, Sir Arthur Lake Day Treatment Center that's located in Limekeel, Places of Safety for Children, including the New Horizons Rehabilitation Center and St. Christopher's Children's Home. We also partner with departments within the Ministry of Social Services and Gender Affairs, such as Social Services, Gender Affairs, and Probation and Child Protective Services, as well as the schools, in particular the guidance counselors. The guidance counselors are they have been trained to manage some of the family issues that they may face, as well as they operate under the ethical code of confidentiality that we, the counselors at the National Counseling Center, operate under. Now, making referrals is done on the first session with the client. So the initial contact with the client, we'll do an assessment of their needs. And based on the needs, we'll then look at our partners to see which one of our partners will be better suited to cater to the needs of the client. Is part of our professional duty as counselors. And the process is a seamless process. It's a journey where we pass the information from one helper, professional helper, to the next. So the client would not have to be flustered, because in the end, their needs will be catered to. And it also underscores our practices within the ethical framework that we operate under, where we don't bring harm to the client, but rather we make sure that we help them, and where we operate within our competence level, which is key to providing psychosocial support to our clients.
Right. Now, Valencia, thank you. So it shows how the department is interconnected with other departments and institutions and organizations within the society, which is so important. Your partner agencies and how your work complements each other. Now, responsibilities of the counselor. I would just not say just responsibilities of the counselor, but the qualities of the counselor, because a counselor must have certain qualities, you know. Mm-hmm. What are some of those?
So, counselors, first, the counselor must be warm and inviting. And of course, my colleagues before stress the ethical code of confidentiality. That must be upheld, because that is paramount in the counseling process. That is what's going to drive the counseling process. First, the counselor
What you mean by warm and inviting? Does it mean that, you know, here am I, I'm coming, I'm well dressed, I'm looking so handsome, and so I hug up and I kiss up and all of that?
Oh,
is that what you mean?
Definitely no.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
definitely not.
Okay, thank you.
No. We don't forge emotional emotional attachments with our clients. That's a boundary that we do not overstep, okay? So then we, of course, warm and inviting, meaning that you must be able to engage the client make the client feels comfortable, provide a safe space for the client to be able to reveal information to you, private information to you, whatever information they want to share that would help the therapeutic process along, right? So that they'll feel safe that whatever I say here to this lady or this male, it's not going to leave this room, right? So that's part of the confidentiality and the qualities of the counselor. So as part of creating that conducive atmosphere, the counselor must ensure that they are non-judgmental as well, and not to infringe any of their personal biases, beliefs, value system, anything like that onto the client, right? And to accept the client for who he is and their reality, and help them to process the feelings, normalize the situations, and get an understanding as to what is happening to them so they can be able to help themselves, build up their strengths, motivate them to see that help is necessary and we are here for you and we are in this together. Because, you know, therapy is an alliance that you're forming with your client. It's not going to work by the counselor alone. The client as well has to be engaging and be a part of the process so that the process can work and benefit the client.
Right. And so therefore you must not get involved in, at least when I was doing some studies and I did pastoral care and counseling, you're not supposed to get involved in dual relationships.
Of course
with
not.
Your clients.
Of course not.
And also it is not advisable to have your family members and very close friends as well, or your boyfriend and your girlfriend come to you for those sorts of professional services.
Yes, that's
and
that's
why?
A conflict
because
of interest.
It's a conflict of interest. You're in a
yes.
dual relationship.
Right.
Neither are you supposed to enter into a relationship with the person with whom you're counseling. And sometimes they even tell you, you know, a few years must pass before that can happen,
right.
and things like that. So, you know, you don't want anything at all to come between you and your client in terms of the professional
relationship.
Right.
The funny thing about that, Mr. Williams, you know that we here in St. Kitts is a small and close-knit society, so we tend to know each other, right? So at the center, when clients present themselves, we sort of like a screening amongst us. So if I know the person, I would not have that person as a client. They'll be referred to another counselor. So the clients can be sure of that. When they come to the center, they're not going to be coming to somebody who knows them. We try as much as possible to get away from that. Yes.
And there's some who will come to you because they know you. Right.
And would appreciate that.
I'm comfortable with you,
Yes.
so I can speak to you.
Yes.
But as Valencia says, we try now. So we'll, as you said, that screening process. That's why we have that whole intake process. So if I see the name, I don't think I could do this. I'm too close to this person. You know, so maybe Mrs. Blake can take it or Valencia can take it. You know, so we try not to do that as well.
And the counselor, in my knowledge, must not reveal their biases, their personal biases, and so on towards people. So, for example, suppose two persons come to you who are in a same-sex relationship, and they come to you for counseling. Are you supposed to treat those persons any different than you would treat a heterosexual couple?
No.
Actually, you're treating the issues
Correct.
and not the client.
And that is what I mean by not allowing one's personal biases and prejudices and discriminatory practices to basically come into play.
Right.
So there's a certain professional distance that one must really maintain.
Definitely.
Right. Yes.
If at all you absolutely cannot maintain the professional distance for whatever reason, so for whatever reason, you know, first and foremost, you're human. So for whatever reason, if it is that you can't make this an issue that you can deal with, and you're too focused on the people,
You
then
recuse
you have
yourself.
ethical responsibility to say, I cannot, because you're going to end up doing harm.
Right.
To
And
recuse oneself.
Correct.
And it happens in everything, even the court sometimes.
Yes.
You hear of judges recusing themselves
Right.
because Not that they won't be fair, but as you correctly said, sometimes it's the appearance.
Yes.
It's the appearance that the public will have
Correct.
Right.
that they will not be fair
Correct.
because they understand the situation.
And that's one of the
or the
things
person
that-
is too close.
Yes,
Right,
that's one of the things they
To
tell
the
you,
situation.
in your training. If it's something that you absolutely cannot do, then you really
Cannot.
need to
You
step back
remove
from it.
yourself.
Right, you
Yes.
really need to remove yourself.
Because you have
it's
to
gonna
do
be harmful.
no harm, right?
You
It's gonna
can
be
create more
harmful,
harm
right?
Done good.
than anything
Done
else
good,
because
yes.
you bring a lot of subjectivity
Correct.
Right, right.
and all of that to the
Yes.
to the
So
the
that's it
matter.
all goes back to the counselor's competence.
Right.
What the counselor is able to do, not want to take on all the cases,
Right.
and then you instead of you helping, you make the situation worse.
Right.
Right. And so therefore we have the responsibilities of the counselor, but we also have the responsibilities of the client.
Correct.
Valencia, what are some of those responsibilities?
Okay, well, I'll take that one.
Oh, Nadia,
Okay,
what are
yes.
some of those
Yes.
responsibilities?
Okay, well, of course, the client has to be open to the process. And I think that all comes back to what Valencia was saying about, creating that environment that is, conducive and it's comfortable and it's relaxed. So they have to be open to the process. Not just, oh, my friend tell me to go to counseling, so I come in. It's not like something that you want to. You have to be open and want to do it. And you have to be honest. That's the only way that you can receive some sort of help. Because you have to be honest of the problems and everything. Now, sometimes, it takes them a little longer. So they're going to give you a piece today. They will give you a piece next week until you actually get a full picture. Right. But we want clients to understand that they have to be honest, in stuff.
Yeah, but so much of that honesty, Nadia, and so much of that openness and so on is contingent upon the counselor.
Right.
And the
atmosphere and the environment. Right. So that's why I said it will take.
Trust.
It will most definitely take time. It's not something. Now, there's some clients that are totally comfortable from day one. They come and they talk and they let you know everything. But there are some that's going to take time. And that's all in your building the rapport and the communication and setting that environment that's conducive to that sort of relationship. So you want to be sure of that as well. And they have to take ownership of the process. When we take ownership of something, we tend to put more into it. We put our all into it. They have to take ownership of the process. And that means coming to appointments when you're scheduled. Coming on time for your appointments. All of that is part of taking ownership and being engaging, in your session as well. So, and also, doing the activities, because we give homework. We give homework. Some persons may not know that. We give you stuff to go home with, some homework activities and stuff. So you have to be, take ownership of the process and engage in all of those various things that we talked about. And of course, seeing the process through. Change cannot happen overnight. You cannot come to the counselor today and say, okay, my problem is gone. You have to follow through to the process, with the process. So don't just, it's not a quick fix. It's not an overnight process. So you have to, tell yourself, you're going to be here for a couple sessions, 6 sessions, whatever, how many sessions. So you have to follow through with that as well. So it's important for them to know that as well, yes.
Sometimes there are certain barriers to what you're trying to do. For example, somebody's coming to counseling, but at the very same time, the atmosphere in which they live and which they thrive. And so therefore, here they're coming and they're hearing something, but then they go back into the very same atmosphere and so on. And that really can retard the growth and development of that individual.
That's true.
Sometimes you find it happens in especially affairs of the heart, relationships and things like that. You have an abusive partner, maybe, and you feel that you have the need to go to counseling, but then at some time you fall back and you say, oh, this person is so nice and so loving, and so on, so on, so on. Then all of a sudden you're telling your counselor, I want to stop. I don't want to continue because I think the problem has evaporated.
Right.
But the problem basically has not evaporated. The problem is still there.
Yes.
And so sometimes you may have more challenges in helping that person to continue.
Or even maybe a situation where family members or persons close to them may say, I'm not seeing any change in you. Why are you going there for? So it's almost like it's discouraging because they don't recognize that it's a process. You can't
Right.
expect your loved one or your family member to just change overnight.
That is
So,
correct.
right,
But the
so they
person
might
who
be
is
saying-
going to counseling, I believe, as well, they need that support network as well.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, not
You know,
everyone
people
has
to
it,
encourage
but
them
yeah,
and
sometimes.
and stick with it, stick with it, do not give up. Because it is so easy to give up.
Yes, yes.
Because
yes.
working on oneself is one of the hardest things to do.
Correct.
Yes, and when you're getting discouraged from every angle, it's kind of hard for you to focus and, say, I'm going to continue this process,
Right.
especially when you're hearing, oh, you're not changing, nothing's,
Right.
you don't need to go and those kind of things. So it's kind of hard, because not everybody comes from a support or have a supportive environment.
Yes, Valencia.
Yes, that goes back to the role of the counselor. That which is so critical, that the counselor has to be the one that guides the counseling process along. And because the counselor understands the dynamics of change and how humans change, right? So the counselor will be the one to motivate this client to change. So they'll build up on their strengths. Look at the strengths that they have hidden in them and point them out to the client. Motivate the client to keep working on the strengths, giving them coping skills.
Right.
All of those. Give them a little psychosocial education, right? So that you can
Understand,
help them
yeah.
to understand and empower them so that they too can realize, okay, all the negativity may be coming to me from my environment when I get home. My counselor is telling me this. And within myself, I realize certain changes. Although they might be little, the counselor is celebrating them with me
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
helping me to get to that big milestone where the goal that I set out to achieve in counseling has been successfully achieved.
Right. Now we are going to go to the phone lines. We are going to continue our discussion, but just to see if we have persons who want to, join in the discussion that we are having. The numbers to call are 466-2666. That is 466-2666, 662-8674, 662-8674, 767-4765, 767-4765, and the overseas number is 1-239-645-4500. That is 1-239-645-4500. We welcome your calls. Right, so Valencia, the Family Matters program, which we heard is not, it takes a different angle. We had Melisha here, who was explaining to us all about the Family Matters program, and quite interesting is that it is not necessarily counseling. It takes a more practical approach and so on. Now, in that program, what is the responsibility of the counselor and the client?
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I think Melisha said
Yes.
it's somewhat similar.
Yes.
Yes.
It's somewhat similar in terms of, as she said, creating that environment, creating that rapport with the client. So there are some similarities, of course, because it's important for you to establish that, rapport and that conducive atmosphere, as Melisha would have explained. Now, they're a little different in terms of, we might be in an actual office, but, they're willing to do, let's sit down on the block or let's sit under the tree, and that's their atmosphere that they work at, just to get the families a little more comfortable. And, of course, she talked about, managing the process, and similar again to what we do as counselors. So there's a lot of similarities in that program as well, even with the responsibilities of the clients themselves. Because all of us, they have to take responsibility
To
for
be
the
willing.
process and be willing to that as well.
Correct.
Okay, you were going to say something, Valencia?
Additionally, the counseling is more, let's say, secluded, for want of a better word, right? We are in a room,
Yes.
and we are employing different therapeutic methods towards the issues that the client might present. And it might take a little longer, and it's more talk. On the client's behalf, more analyzing, more exploring, and stuff. It's not as practical
Yes.
at that
Family
end as
Matters,
the
yeah.
Family Matters. The Family Matters would have more practicality towards it. Okay.
Okay. Right, so the counselor has responsibility, the family has responsibility. because then you're talking about the group now,
Right.
the family unit, so important. Now, I know that we have treated extensively the living in, we have a call. Working for you, good afternoon. We lost that caller. So much of our lives these days and the lives of people all over the world are consumed with the COVID-19 pandemic and virus. Never before, I think, within a century, have we had such discussions every day about this. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hello? That's
Yes,
right?
yes, I'm hearing you, sir.
That's right?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
Good
Good afternoon to the fine ladies there. That's right?
Yes. Jamil?
Right, working for you is very sharp, and it's nice to see you inviting the ladies, these ladies, and these kind of stories, because this is the things we want in the community. A little more vigilant in the ghettos, because in the ghettos is where these problems lies. In the boardwalk and over the southeast, they hide these problems. But in the ghettos, these problems end up right on the street. That's why, thank you to the ladies again, and thank you for working for you to the poor people to educate us. Have a good day, that's why, and the ladies.
Yes, thank you very much, Jam Down, for your positive contribution. Yes, so I was saying that so much of our lives these days are consumed with the COVID-19 pandemic and also the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the most pressing issue really of our times and the greatest challenge that countries really have in any sort of management, and it has come with a virus that we can't even see. How are your services impacted in this COVID era?
Yes, yes. Well, let me speak a little bit on that. One of the strengths of counseling is that face-to-face interaction.
Yes.
Because counselors read what is going on with the individual in a space. So the individual is there, you're able to pick up on nuances, on nonverbals, on things that are relevant to the issue. When COVID came and we had to shut all of that down, we missed a lot of the processes that we needed to have with our clients. Nevertheless, we have to go on. So we're lucky in that we're able to have some face-to-face contact with clients again, because again, that's the best way that clients are served. Well, for many of them, some clients prefer online because of various things and so forth, but I'll get to that. So we're able to come back into office. So we of course have had to adjust and adapt to what is going on. And so, of course, we have the non-pharmaceutical protocols in place. So everybody has to come in with a mask. We have the hand sanitizing and so forth. One of the things that was one of the most important changes we made is how we schedule. So our scheduling is a 50-minute hour, and we're very precise with that time. We have a 50-minute hour. So how it was in the past was, most of us felt most comfortable with starting on the hour and going to 50-minute after. And so, clients would come in, somebody for me at 11, somebody for her at 11, somebody for her at 11, and they'd finish at 11:50. So the crossing would happen, not very extensive, but it will happen. So in an effort to try and make sure that we minimize that now, we are doing scheduling on the quarter hour for each counselor. So I may have someone coming at 11 to 11:50. You may have someone that would come in at 11:15 to, what is that, 12:05. And Valencia may have somebody who will come in at 11:30 and until 12:20. So it's 50 minutes. So you'd notice in our timing that nobody meets anybody. All right? So we get a chance to make sure that the office is free of people. It also allows us more time to clean down and make sure that we do all the wipings and so forth. So you don't have a lot of people crossing anyway, and in between the time frame, you have the ability to wipe down all of the surfaces that need wiping down. And we have expanded our virtual, I talked about it at first, and we have Ms. Hazel, who is our deputy, who is excellent with our virtual, in our virtual space. And so we do have options for virtual counseling, and some people prefer that. There's some people who are immunocompromised and who don't feel comfortable going out to mix with other people, or for whatever reasons they don't feel comfortable being out. For some people where they are, it's just easier for them to be able to log on and just, so we have virtual counseling. So these are the things that we have been doing to try and make sure that we are as COVID compliant as possible. Certainly with the Family Matters, I'll speak to Family Matters. Again, Malisha would have talked to you about the fact that they meet families where they are. And certainly in this COVID era, they had to shift how they met families. They had to meet families on virtual platforms and try and make the best of that situation. So it's about making sure that we manage the situation as best as we could. And certainly for us, as I say, one of the things that works best for us is our scheduling, so that everybody has that space to come and go without meeting anybody else. Yes.
And COVID has made it difficult, especially with the wearing of masks, because I like to look at you, straight on. I like to see your facial expressions. Now you're only seeing the eyes, I like to see smiles or whatever reaction. So it's kind of difficult, with the mask, but it's something, we're just going to have to work around, and we're adapting to. It's very difficult. The online, I guess Naima could speak more to the online. She's quite comfortable with online, the online counseling. But online too, you miss it, because I can't see you tapping your foot, or I can't see your little nervous gestures or stuff like that. But I mean, as we say, is adapting to these changing times is something that that can't avoid.
The online as well comes with its own ethical issues.
Correct.
Yes. Right? Because this is a different ball game now, where the client is on the other end, and you have no clue who is in the room with the client, what they're feeding them, if the client is being honest with you, and then again, like,
recorded.
So it comes with its own ethical challenges. Yes.
It does, and sometimes too, I've seen things where there have been certain slip-ups, especially if we're using Zoom and we're using camera and things like that.
Right.
And sometimes as an image comes across that you really should not see.
Right.
And it can be rather embarrassing.
Yes.
Because you have the possibility of hacking, because persons are able to hack into Zoom, and it's challenging is to find a platform that is safe. As I said, I guess Naima could speak more on how she manages the online, but it is challenging. It's difficult. You have to be very careful with online. So
Naima, can you hear me? Are you there?
I'm here. I've been here listening to the counselors.
Yes. We wanted to share a little bit, Naima, in terms of the online platform that is being used for counseling.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, I am mainly currently our online counselor, which actually for me, I know most of the counselors are not familiar with online, are used to it because it's something kind of new. But to me, I actually see a lot of the benefits of being online. For me, I see the benefits for clients. Some clients can't get in. Sometimes it might be a condition. So if I have a client who's a depressive, it's very hard for them to motivate themselves to get up to come to the office. They make a million excuses as to why they cannot come into the office. It creates a lot of levels of anxiety for them as to why they can't come in the office, but I can counsel them laying in their bed. So I can have a client who's literally laying down on their pillow, but they will do their 50-minute session. So for me, it actually creates an accessibility. Also for younger clients, a lot of the like younger students, college students, even high school students, they much prefer, some of them, the online platform for them. For clients who are in quarantine and they need help, that's a great platform. And then of course, when there is disruptions to service in office, there is no disruptions for me when I'm doing online counseling. So currently I'm at home isolating, my son goes to a school that's closed, but it hasn't disrupted my work at all. My clients, I meet them just like I would online. We could use any platform. To some of the issues that we discussed for confidentiality, I prefer to use the WhatsApp video platform because that platform is encrypted. So I much prefer to use that, but some clients would like to use Zoom. That's their choice. I don't usually think of it the concern of other people being in the room. That would be that client's choice if they feel like they want to expose themselves and their private business to the other people in the room. That would be their personal issue, but I don't tend to find that we have very many issues when it comes to connectivity. I think it's just a new way of doing counseling and a different way for those that it works for. Some of my clients love to be in office, and so they'll take online counseling, but they much prefer to be in office. So sometimes you have to use both modalities just to meet people's needs. But other than that, I think it's a new option for us looking at where we are in the COVID age. And of course, I also don't have the issue of masks. So when I'm online with my client, I can see all of my clients' facial expressions because I can't give you COVID through the screen. So then I don't have to worry also about risk, and they don't have to worry about risk. That when you're in the office, you do have to wear your mask. We do wear our mask. And so that also limits your interaction, which is one of the challenges we have with COVID counseling.
And of course, you know, you made a good point. A lot of times now we really can't see people's faces, and it affects, you know, what we can see in terms of their expression and their smile, or if they're frowning, and all of that sort of a thing, because everybody now is masked.
Yes.
Yes.
So you've made a very good point. Now tell me something, Mrs. Blake. Is there any scope for private counseling? Any options for private counseling?
Yes, yes. So, you know, we've been talking today about National Counseling Center, and we've had a rich discussion as to why we are expanding our, you know, our name and just our services, right? What we do and so forth. So, and one of the things I said earlier is that people are using counseling more and more frequently to be able to address their issues. There is scope for private counseling, and there are private counselors, and people utilize them because some people just want the freedom of being able to access care on their own at a time that is more available and relevant to them. So private counselors usually would have the ability to meet with people evenings, after hours, Saturdays, Sundays, whatever it is. So some people just want to have that freedom to be able to touch base with a private counselor and have them meet at their own time. Some people don't want to come into a public system, and so just that sense of privacy and that sense of they feel that they want to just have a sense of just comfort level, right? And so some people don't want to come into a public system and ask about private options, all right? And then, you know, having private options is also important because when people use the private options, when people are able to and feel comfortable use the private options, it means that the public space has more availability for people who need services and who may not be able to access private options. And so all of these are things, all of these are benefits to all of us, you know, providers and people seeking services benefit or get the benefit of having private options available. And so, you know, we could always refer people just make sure they call our number 465-5000. If you need to call just to ask for a referral, you can call us and we'll talk you through some of the referral sources that we have and that we work with all of the time. But private options are available.
Okay. Good. Now, I must tell you that lovely discussion, beautiful faces, but we are out of time. And so therefore, I would ask you to provide the audience with any contact number of how you can be reached, office, cell phone, and so on.
Well, I'll close off with that, but perhaps if we could ask the councillors to kind of wrap up with some of the words, and then I'll close off.
Emphasize anything that you would like the public to know, anything that you would like to emphasize before we leave.
Okay. Like we said before, these are challenging times because we are now in the pandemic almost 18 months now, and we realize there's a spike in anxiety and depression. So we just want to encourage the listening and viewing public to come on out to the National Counseling Center to seek professional assistance. Rather than stay behind closed doors and struggle by yourself, it is important for you to break the silence and seek the help despite the stigma and reach out for that assistance, because you can function well if you get the help to deal with the mental illness or condition that you're struggling with. Okay.
Yes, I too also want to encourage people to reach out, for that help. Far too often, many persons have done it alone. And just to let you know that we are there, the center is there, and you've heard about all the services that are offered. So, we just want to encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities and these services. As we say, you don't have to do it alone. These are very challenging times. For some persons, things are not getting better, but we just want you to know that, there is help for when you need it.
Okay, right.
Mrs. Blake, before you go there, I want to ask one question.
Okay.
And you probably, I don't know if you know what it is. But do you have any men, clinical counselors, in your department?
Not at the moment. When I started talking, I talked about the fact that we have some new faces here. We had a wonderful partner, clinical counselor,
Yes.
in the face of Mr. Davin Francis, who recently left this service to come back in a few years. But he's gone to further his studies. And so at the end of the day, we as citizens of the country would benefit from the pause and the break that we have here. So we don't have any clinical male staff. We have one male on the team, and he is a part of the Family Counselors Program, Mr. Jeremy Thomas. So he is an addition in the Family Counselors Program. But other than that, you have a team of women serving everyone.
Okay. Sometimes we don't want to give the impression that counseling is a female-dominated profession.
Yes.
And that men can be counselors as well.
Of course.
Just like we have the stereotype of nurses being female,
Yes.
but there are also male nurses.
Right. Maybe that should have been my wrap-up statement, to encourage males to get into the profession.
Yes.
Right, and sometimes, you're looking for men who can understand the problems of men and perhaps be better able to counsel men. And I don't know, but
Yes. It would be ideal, but there's some professions that tend to be more heavily populated by particular
care,
and counseling is certainly one of them.
Right.
But hopefully along the way. I just wanted to wrap up by hoping that we achieved something here today. Our goal here today was to bring additional information, was to inform, was to reorient, was to, just let people know how things function. And I hope that we're able to do that today. Oftentimes when you have counselors on a program, we talk about counseling issues. And so we really wanted for people to have a sense of how we function, for people to have a sense of the scope of work that we do, for people to have a sense of the fact that what we do is intentional, that everything we do, so many things we talked about here today, focus on the intentionality of our work. And so we always think it's important for people to have education and information. And when you have education and information, it helps with your choice, with choices that you make. So we hope that we are able to do some of that today, just in terms of a reorienting about the counseling services. I just want to close off by giving our numbers. I think You know, a lot of people have our numbers, but our main office number is 465-5000, and that is the office number that we could be reached at. We also have a cell phone, 662-8086, that sometimes people prefer to use cell phone to cell phone, and that is often manned by the administrative clerk at the office. And so we have contact points. So 465-5000, the main office, and 662-8086. We could be reached for people to maybe get clarification on some of the things we talked about today, or just get some more information.
Yeah, do you have an email address that people can probably send something to? Do you have that?
We are still working on that as a part of our social media, so that we have our counseling center media email address. But other than that, we have email addresses of all of the counselors who work here. So that may be a little bit difficult to give here, but again, just in terms of if you need any more information, 465-5000, and we're able to.
Or do you have a hotline number that people can call, maybe if they're in crisis and they need crisis counseling?
No, that is something that we hope to be able to, again, manage later. Right now, 311 is the number that is associated with the COVID crises that people have been experiencing. And 311 has been very effective in connecting people to us in that crisis.
Okay.
But just in terms of general crises, we continue to evolve and look at what services are needed and address that.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Well, I just want to thank all of you. It's been a long time since I've had 5 persons on my panel, but we were able to manage it. So I want to thank you very much, Mrs. Blake, for coming and for heading this panel today in terms of the counseling department, soon to be rebranded the National Counseling Center. Naima, thank you so much. Your presence, you know, was very encouraging.
Yes.
And that smile of yours, of course, is always so bright. And thank you so much for sharing on the virtual platform, something that you are very comfortable with. And we just want to wish you all the best at the counseling department. Thank you, Nahima. We thank Valencia Byron as well for coming and sharing with us in terms of the family and the Family Matters program as well. And we thank Nadia. Nadia, thank you. And we thank Makisha Caesar. She was here on the panel, but you know, we had to work it out, so there was a switch. I want to thank all of you and to encourage you and to thank you for the important work that you are doing. You know, people need somebody to talk to.
Definitely.
They need somebody to listen to them. And sometimes that is all that is needed. You know, to lift somebody's spirits, to make them feel good about themselves, to make them feel whole, you know, and integrated into society and things like that. It is something that we cannot underscore enough. And as you correctly said, Mrs. Blake, more and more people are understanding this,
Yes, yes, indeed.
you know, and they are to be encouraged. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Thank you
us.
for having
Yeah,
us.
having us.
I want to thank all of our listeners to today's program. I want to thank you, Jam Down, for calling in and giving such positive feedback in terms of the program and the need that you see, especially in what you call the ghetto, quote unquote, that there it is that people have needs for counseling and so on. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Next week we will be back with another Working for You program. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams. Take good care.